August 17, 1943. Kursk salient, Soviet Union. 2:47 p.m. Oberleutnant Michael Wittmann scans the horizon through his commander's cupola as his Tiger I, tactical number S-21, sits hull down behind a destroyed collective farm. The 88mm KWK 36L/56 gun points northeast, where Soviet T-34s and American-built Shermans probe German defenses. His radio crackles with reports from nearby units. 3 Tigers knocked out by mechanical failure in the last hour. 2 transmission casualties, 1 engine fire. Not a single enemy shell fired. Wittmann's own Tiger has been operational for 6 weeks. A remarkable achievement. The regimental maintenance officer told him yesterday that the average operational lifespan before major mechanical failure stands at 43 days of field service. His Tiger represents an exception, not the rule. The leather-bound technical manual beside his seat reads like a prayer book for a temperamental god. 300 pages of maintenance procedures, lubrication schedules, troubleshooting guides for the Maybach H. L230P 45 engine that produces 690 horsepower but demands constant attention from expert mechanics. The transmission alone requires 18 different types of specialized tools and a 4-man crew working 6 hours to remove and replace. 300 yards away, a Tiger from 2nd Company suddenly shudders to a halt. Black smoke pours from engine deck grills. The crew bails out, leaving behind 56 tons of Germany's finest engineering disabled not by Soviet anti-tank guns, but by a failed oil pump bearing that costs 6 Reichsmarks and requires 3 weeks to replace through official supply channels. Wittmann keys his radio. S-21 to battalion. Another Tiger down. Mechanical casualty. Request recovery. The battalion commander's response carries resignation. Acknowledged S-21. Recovery vehicle is servicing 4 other breakdowns. Estimate 6 hours. 6 hours during which that Tiger sits immobile, vulnerable, useless. The mathematics of Tiger warfare are becoming undeniable. For every Tiger destroyed in actual combat, 3 break down from mechanical failure. For every Tiger ready for battle, 2 sit in maintenance depots awaiting parts that may never arrive. For every minute spent fighting, 15 minutes are spent maintaining, repairing, adjusting, and coaxing complex systems back to functionality. What Wittmann cannot know, sitting in his functioning Tiger, watching another crew abandon their broken machine, is that the industrial mathematics destroying German armoured warfare were determined not in Soviet factories or American arsenals, but in German engineering offices, where brilliant designers created the world's most formidable tank and simultaneously doomed it through decisions that prioritize perfection over production. The concept behind the Tiger emerged from harsh lessons learned on the Eastern Front during 1941 and 1942. German Panzer IIIs and IVs encountered Soviet T-34s and KV-1s whose armour and firepower exceeded German capabilities. Tank battles that German doctrine assumed would be quick, decisive affairs became prolonged engagements where German numerical advantages meant nothing against impenetrable armour. Hitler demanded a heavy tank that could dominate any opponent. German engineering responded with characteristic ambition, creating not merely a superior tank, but an engineering masterpiece that pushed contemporary technology to theoretical limits. The Tiger I, officially Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger AUF E, specified by Henschel und Sohn AG in Kassel with design leadership from Erwin Aders, represented advanced mechanical engineering. The primary armament, the 88mm KWK 36L/56 gun, adapted from the famous Flak 18/36 anti-aircraft gun, could penetrate 112 mm of armour at 1,000 meters, with standard armour-piercing ammunition. The gun itself weighed 2,210 pounds without mount and recoil mechanisms, requiring a massive turret to accommodate it. The turret, a horseshoe-shaped construction of interlocking armour plates welded at precise angles, weighed 11 metric tons empty. The turret ring, 1,850 millimeters in diameter, was the largest fitted to any operational tank of the war, requiring precision machining to tolerances of 0.5 millimeters to ensure smooth rotation under combat loads. Hydraulic traverse motors powered by a complex system driven from the main engine provided 360-degree rotation in 60 seconds under ideal conditions, though mud, mechanical wear, or battle damage frequently degraded this performance. The armor scheme prioritized protection over mobility. Frontal hull armor measured 100 millimeters at vertical angles, virtually impenetrable to most Allied anti-tank weapons at combat ranges. Side armor of 80 millimeters and rear armor of 82 millimeters provided comprehensive protection. The armor was face-hardened steel produced by Krupp, using proprietary processes that created surface layers harder than the backing metal, causing armor-piercing shot to shatter rather than penetrate. This manufacturing technique required specialized facilities, extended production time, and consumed scarce alloying materials including nickel, molybdenum, and chromium that Germany's war economy increasingly lacked. The Maybach HL 230 P45 Vi-12 gasoline engine, displacing 23,095 cubic centimeters and producing 690 horsepower at 3,000 RPM, represented cutting-edge automotive engineering. Each engine required 1,200 individual components, machined to tolerances averaging 0.05 millimeters. The crankshaft alone, a forged steel component weighing 287 pounds, required 18 separate machining operations and 8 hours of labor by master machinists. Pistons were cast aluminum alloy requiring precision boring and hand fitting. Connecting rods were forged steel requiring individual balancing to within 1 gram. The fuel injection system used direct injection technology decades ahead of civilian automotive applications, providing improved fuel economy and power output, but requiring specialized maintenance by mechanics trained at Maybach facilities. The transmission represented perhaps the Tiger's most problematic system. The Maybach Olvar 401-216 B 8-speed semi-automatic transmission weighed 1,500 pounds and consisted of over 800 individual components. It provided 8 forward gears and 4 reverse gears through a complex system of planetary gear sets, hydraulic clutches, and pre-selector mechanisms operated by a steering wheel rather than traditional tank levers. This system theoretically provided superior controllability and reduced driver fatigue compared to conventional clutch and brake steering. But the mechanical complexity created reliability problems that plagued Tiger operations throughout the war. Each transmission required approximately 80 hours of assembly by skilled technicians, and field replacement, when parts were even available, required a specialized crane and 4-man crew working 12 to 16 hours under ideal workshop conditions. The suspension system exemplified German over-engineering, where American and Soviet tanks used simple bogie suspensions with 4 to 6 road wheels per side. The Tiger employed overlapping and interleaved road wheel arrangement with 24 road wheels per side, each 800 millimeters in diameter. This Schachtelaufwerk design, pioneered by Henschel, distributed the tank's massive weight across greater surface area, reducing ground pressure to 1.04 kilograms per square centimeter, allowing the 56-ton Tiger to traverse soft ground that would bog down lighter tanks with conventional suspensions. The engineering elegance was undeniable, but the operational cost proved devastating. Each road wheel required its own independent torsion bar suspension arm, multiplying components and maintenance requirements. The interleaved design meant that replacing an inner road wheel required removing multiple outer wheels first, a job requiring 6 hours and specialized tools in workshop conditions. In muddy or frozen conditions, where mud packed between wheels and froze solid overnight, the entire suspension could seize, immobilizing the tank until laboriously thawed. Soviet intelligence reports from captured Tiger examination in March 1943 specifically noted this vulnerability, recommending night attacks in muddy conditions when Tigers were most likely immobilized by frozen suspension systems. The final drive units connecting the transmission to the drive sprockets represented another critical failure point. Each final drive was a precision gear reduction system housed in a complex casting that required 200 hours of machining. The final drive gears themselves were case-hardened steel requiring specialized heat treatment facilities. Under combat loads, particularly during frequent direction changes or operation on slopes, these final drives experienced stress loads exceeding design specifications. Failure rates were catastrophic. Post-war analysis of Tiger casualties by British intelligence showed that 18% of Tigers lost in combat were abandoned due to final drive failure alone, with crews unable to effect field repairs and no recovery assets available to evacuate 56-ton hulks from contested territory. The electrical system used 12-volt architecture common to German military vehicles, but the Tiger's complexity required over 2 kilometers of wiring, connecting 47 separate electrical components. The engine starting system alone used a complex arrangement involving 2 Bosch compressed air starters connected to 28-litre air bottles charged to 200 bar pressure. This system provided reliable starting in cold weather, but required specialized high-pressure pumps unavailable at field maintenance levels. When air bottles leaked, a common occurrence given rough handling and combat vibration, Tigers could not be started without external assistance from another vehicle or hand-cranking the massive V12 engine, a procedure requiring 6 men and 45 minutes of exhausting labor. The production reality behind each Tiger revealed industrial processes fundamentally incompatible with modern warfare's material demands. Manufacturing a single Tiger, I required approximately 300,000 man-hours of labor, from first steel cutting to final acceptance testing. This figure, documented in Henschel production records captured at war's end, represented roughly 30 times the man-hours required to produce a contemporary Sherman tank. The disparity arose not from German inefficiency, but from conscious design decisions prioritizing quality, precision, and performance over manufacturability. The hull construction began with armor plate provided by Krupp, Dillinger Hüter, or other specialized steel producers. Each plate arrived at Henschel already hardened through complex heat treatment processes, meaning the plates could not be welded using conventional techniques without destroying the hardening. Instead, Henschel welders used specialized low-hydrogen electrodes and preheating procedures, with each major weld requiring verification by X-ray inspection. A single hull required 2,847 individual welds, each documented and inspected. This level of quality control ensured structural integrity but consumed time and required skilled welders who underwent 6 months of training before being certified for Tiger production. The turret construction proved even more time-intensive. The horseshoe turret design, while providing superior ballistic protection, required multiple complex curved plates joined at precise angles. The main gun mounting, the recoil mechanism installation, the rangefinder integration, and the commander's cupola fitting each required specialized fixtures and skilled technicians. Krupp, the primary turret manufacturer, reported an average of 450 man-hours per turret for machining operations alone before assembly began. The gun itself required precision boring of the 88mm barrel to tolerances of 0.08mm, accomplished on specialized machines operated by master machinists. Each gun underwent proof firing with 100 test rounds before acceptance, with barrel measurements taken after every 25 rounds to verify that wear remained within specifications. Barrels failing these tests were rejected, scrapped, and replaced, with rejection rates averaging 11%, an acceptable failure rate by precision manufacturing standards, but a devastating waste in a war economy short of chrome and nickel steel. Engine and transmission production created separate bottlenecks. Maybach produced the HL 230 engines at their Friedrichshafen facility, but production capacity maxed out at approximately 130 engines monthly across all applications, not just Tigers. The engines required components from 74 different subcontractors, creating a supply chain vulnerable to disruption. When Allied bombing damaged a single bearing manufacturer in Schweinfurt in October 1943, Maybach engine production dropped 40% for 3 months while alternative suppliers were qualified and brought online. The transmission situation proved worse. Maybach's transmission production relied on specialized gear cutting machines, of which only 8 existed in Germany, all at the Friedrichshafen plant. These machines, manufactured by Fellows Gear Shaper Corporation in America before the war, could not be replaced once damaged. Each machine could produce approximately 12 transmission gear sets monthly, creating a hard ceiling on transmission production regardless of demand. When one machine was damaged during a bombing raid in April 1944, German transmission production for all heavy tanks dropped by 12.5%, and the gap was never recovered. The assembly process at Henschel's Kassel facility employed skilled workers using traditional manufacturing techniques rather than assembly line methods. Each Tiger moved through the factory on a wheeled cart, stopping at successive stations where teams of workers installed specific components. This job shop approach allowed flexibility and high quality, but precluded the productivity gains Ford and Chrysler achieved through continuous assembly line production. Henschel could produce approximately 25 Tigers monthly at peak production in 1943, employing 800 workers directly on Tiger assembly, plus another 2,200 workers in component manufacturing and support roles. For comparison, the Chrysler Detroit Arsenal tank plant employed 5,800 workers at its peak and produced approximately 1,000 M4 Shermans monthly, achieving productivity rates 40 times higher per worker than Henschel's Tiger production. The mathematical implications were straightforward but devastating for German strategic planning. From August 1942, when production began, until August 1944, when the Tiger I was phased out in favor of the Tiger II, Germany produced exactly 1,347 Tiger I's tanks. Production records from Henschel show monthly output ranging from 25 to 36 units, averaging 28 tanks monthly over the 24-month production run. This represented the maximum sustainable output given available factory space, skilled labor, component supply, and quality control requirements. Meanwhile, American industry produced 49,234 M4 Sherman tanks between February 1942 and July 1945, an average of approximately 1,210 Shermans monthly over 40.5 months of production. The production ratio, 36.6 Shermans for every Tiger I, told a story of industrial warfare that no amount of tactical excellence or individual tank superiority could overcome. But raw production numbers understated the operational reality because the Tiger's complexity created maintenance and logistical burdens that further reduced available combat power. German logistics planning documents from Oberkommando des Heeres archives specified that each Tiger required 10 times the spare parts inventory of a Panzer IV medium tank. A Panzer IV company with 14 tanks required approximately 4,500 different spare parts in authorized stockage levels. A Tiger company with 14 tanks required 12,000 different parts, many unique to the Tiger and unavailable through standard supply channels. The Maybach engine alone used 47 components not shared with any other German tank engine, meaning those parts had to be manufactured specifically for Tiger support with no economies of scale from other vehicle programs. The final drive units required 12 unique components. The transmission used 89 parts found nowhere else in German armoured vehicle production. Field maintenance requirements exceeded the capabilities of standard German tank maintenance units. Wehrmacht doctrine specified that each Panzer battalion included an organic maintenance company with 16 specialized vehicles, 75 maintenance personnel, and mobile workshop facilities capable of performing engine changes, transmission repairs, and moderate battle damage repairs. These maintenance companies proved adequate for Panzer III and IV operations, where crews could perform routine maintenance and battalion maintenance handled more complex repairs. Tiger units required augmented maintenance support, typically double the personnel and triple the specialized equipment. Even with enhanced support, Tiger units reported mechanical readiness rates averaging 62%, meaning that in a typical Tiger battalion with 45 tanks authorized, only 28 were operational at any given time. The remaining 17 were deadlined awaiting parts, undergoing repairs, or restricted to limited operations due to partial system failures. By comparison, American Sherman units in Europe during 1944 to 1945 maintained mechanical readiness rates averaging 87%, with most deadlined vehicles returning to service within 72 hours. The operational impact became brutally apparent during major campaigns. Operation Citadel, the German offensive at Kursk in July 1943, included 146 Tigers in the northern and southern pincers. On July 5th, the offensive's opening day, 133 Tigers were operational, representing 91% readiness achieved through extraordinary preparation efforts, including pre-positioned spare parts and augmented maintenance crews working around the clock during the preceding week. By July 12th, 1 week into the offensive, only 83 Tigers remained operational, a 37.6% reduction. German after-action reports attribute 31 Tigers to combat losses, both complete kills and damage requiring depot-level repair. But 19 Tigers were lost to mechanical failure alone, primarily transmission and final drive casualties. The remaining 13 were restricted operations, capable of moving but suffering from degraded systems that limited combat effectiveness. The mobility loss rate, 1.9 tanks per day to mechanical failure, exceeded combat loss rates, and occurred despite operating in prepared defensive positions with established logistics support. During the Normandy campaign following D-Day, Schwerpanzerabteilung 101, equipped with 45 Tiger IS, exemplified the operational frustration of commanding technologically superior but mechanically fragile equipment. The unit landed in France with 42 operational Tigers on June 12, 1944, after losing 3 to mechanical breakdown during rail transport from training areas in Belgium. By June 30th, after 18 days of combat operations, the battalion reported 14 operational Tigers. Combat losses accounted for 11 tanks destroyed or damaged beyond field repair. But 17 additional Tigers were deadlined for mechanical reasons, primarily transmission failures, final drive casualties, and engine problems. The battalion commander, Hauptmann Michael Wittmann, by then a highly decorated tank ace, reported to 2nd SS Panzer Corps headquarters, "We are losing more Tigers to our own engineering than to enemy action. The tanks are superb weapons when they function, but they function too infrequently to maintain sustained combat operations. The maintenance burden extended beyond major component failures. Routine maintenance for a Tiger required significantly more time than comparable tasks on simpler tanks. Daily maintenance, performed by the 5-man crew, consumed 90 minutes minimum and included checking oil levels in engine, transmission, and both final drives, greasing 16 separate lubrication points on the suspension, inspecting track tension, checking hydraulic fluid levels for the turret traverse system, and testing electrical systems. Weekly maintenance added another 4 hours, including suspension inspection, brake adjustment, track pin inspection, and engine valve clearance checks. Monthly maintenance required 16 hours and involved removing road wheels to inspect torsion bars, changing engine oil and filters, adjusting the transmission pre-selector mechanism, and inspecting the recoil mechanism. These maintenance schedules assumed ideal conditions with all required lubricants, tools, and parts available. In combat conditions, with supply shortages, damaged tools, and exhausted crews, maintenance was often deferred, accelerating mechanical wear and increasing failure rates. German training manuals for Tiger crews included an entire section on emergency operation procedures, detailing how to continue operating with degraded systems. A Tiger with failed hydraulic turret traverse could still fight using manual traverse, requiring 2 men cranking handles to rotate the 11-ton turret at approximately 1 degree per second. A Tiger with transmission damage could be locked in a single gear, allowing limited mobility. A Tiger with final drive failure on one side could limp to recovery using the opposite track, though this risked catastrophic damage to the remaining final drive. These expedients kept Tigers in combat longer, but further stressed already overstressed components. The German perspective on Tiger operations evolved as the war progressed, and the gap between theoretical performance and operational reality became undeniable. Early operations reports from late 1942 and early 1943 expressed enthusiasm for the Tiger's combat capabilities. General Oberst Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of Armoured Troops, wrote in February 1943, following the Tiger's debut at Leningrad, "The new heavy tank proves its superiority in every engagement. Its 88mm gun destroys enemy tanks at ranges where we remain invulnerable. Its armour withstands hits from all known Soviet anti-tank weapons. This is the decisive weapon for restoring German armoured superiority." But subsequent reports revealed mounting concern about operational sustainability. A technical evaluation from Kursk operations in August 1943 noted, "The Tiger achieves remarkable combat results when operational. Single Tigers regularly destroy 5 to 10 enemy tanks without loss. However, operational readiness rates below 60% mean that theoretical combat power is never achieved. We calculate that 4 operational Panzervorwürfe provide greater sustained combat value than 6 Tigers, of which only 3 are operational." By 1944, field commanders recognized the broader implications. General der Panzertruppen Hermann Balck, commanding 4th Panzer Army, wrote to Guderian in September 1944, "The Tiger represents a misallocation of industrial resources. The man-hours required to build 1 Tiger would produce 5 Panzervorwürfe or 3 Panthers. The 5 Panzervorwürfe would provide greater operational availability, lower logistics burden, and superior strategic mobility. Our obsession with individual vehicle superiority blinds us to the mathematics of sustained operations. We are building racing cars for a marathon." German intelligence recognized American production mathematics created an insurmountable advantage. Captured American documents and interrogations of prisoners revealed Sherman production figures that German analysts initially dismissed as propaganda. By mid-1943, accumulating evidence forced recognition that American tank production exceeded German production by factors of 10 or greater. Fremde Heere West, the intelligence branch assessing Western Allied forces, produced a devastating report in November 1943 comparing German and American tank production. The analysis noted that Germany's total 1943 tank production across all types, including Tigers, Panthers, Panzer IVs and assault guns, would reach approximately 12,000 vehicles. American production in 1943 would exceed 29,000 tanks, primarily Shermans. The report calculated that even if German tanks achieved 3-to-1 kill ratios in combat, which optimistic assessments suggested was possible, the numerical disparity meant Germany would lose the attrition war. More troubling, American production was accelerating, while German production faced constraints from labor shortages, material scarcity, and bombing disruption. The report concluded, "We face opponents whose industrial capacity exceeds our own by margins that tactical excellence cannot overcome. They can afford losses we cannot sustain. They replace destroyed vehicles faster than we destroy them. The mathematics of industrial warfare favor our enemies decisively. The maintenance crisis intensified as the war progressed, and Germany's logistical situation deteriorated. In 1943, when Germany still controlled most of occupied Europe and could access French manufacturing facilities, Romanian oil fields, and Swedish iron ore, spare parts production met approximately 70% of requirements. Tiger units received priority allocation, ensuring that critical components reach frontline units within 2 to 3 weeks of requisition. By 1944, Allied bombing campaigns systematically dismantled this logistics network. The transportation plan, implemented before D-Day, targeted rail yards, bridges, and marshalling centers throughout occupied Europe. Synthetic fuel production facilities suffered concentrated attacks under the oil campaign, reducing German fuel production by 70% between May and September 1944. Component suppliers faced direct targeting, with bearing plants, gear manufacturers, and specialized facilities destroyed or damaged. The cumulative effect devastated Tiger operations. Spare parts requisitions that took 3 weeks in 1943 took 3 months by mid-1944, if parts arrived at all. Units resorted to cannibalizing immobile Tigers to keep others operational, creating a death spiral where the operational tank fleet shrank continuously even without combat losses. By December 1944, some Tiger units reported mechanical readiness rates below 30%, rendering them combat ineffective despite theoretical combat power that remained superior to Allied tanks. The Eastern Front experience proved particularly brutal for Tiger operations. Soviet forces developed systematic responses to Tigers that exploited their mobility limitations and maintenance vulnerabilities. Rather than engaging Tigers in direct tank combat, where German advantages in armor and firepower were decisive, Soviet doctrine emphasized artillery bombardment of suspected Tiger positions, forcing frequent displacement that stressed mechanical systems. Soviet forces specifically targeted Tiger recovery vehicles and maintenance units, recognizing that destroying support elements was more strategically valuable than destroying individual Tigers. A Tiger damaged but recoverable could be repaired and returned to combat. A Tiger damaged with no recovery capability available became a permanent loss. Soviet intelligence documents from 1944, captured by German forces and later recovered by Western intelligence services, included specific instructions for identifying Tiger assembly areas by the distinctive track patterns left by interleaved suspension and directing artillery fire on these locations. The instructions noted, "The Tiger is more vulnerable to mechanical breakdown than combat damage. Artillery bombardment forces movement, accelerates wear on transmissions and final drives, and prevents adequate maintenance. Sustained harassment of Tiger positions achieves strategic results without requiring direct tank engagement." German tankers developed acute awareness of their mechanical vulnerability. Lieutenant Otto Carius, commanding Tiger 217 in Schwerpanzerabteilung 502 on the Eastern Front, wrote in his post-war memoir, "We fought 2 enemies. The Soviets we could usually defeat. Our own engineering we could not. Every mission involved calculations beyond tactical considerations. How far could we advance before mechanical failure stranded us in enemy territory? Could we reach objectives and return to friendly lines before transmissions failed? Would recovery assets be available if we broke down?" These calculations consumed as much attention as enemy dispositions. The psychological burden affected German tankers profoundly. Tiger crews knew they commanded the most formidable tanks in the world, yet they lived with constant awareness that mechanical failure could transform their invincible fortress into a stationary tomb. Standard procedure when a Tiger was immobilized beyond field repair required crews to destroy their own vehicle with demolition charges to prevent capture. This meant that transmission failure deep in enemy territory resulted in abandoning not just the tank, but also the considerable emotional investment crews developed in their vehicles. Crews named their tanks, personalized them, lived in them for months. Destroying your own Tiger because a bearing failed created demoralization that combat losses did not. The spare parts crisis became so severe that Germany established specialized Panzerbergerkommando, heavy tank recovery units, equipped with 18-ton half-tracks and specialized equipment specifically for recovering disabled Tigers. These units operated behind front lines, racing forward when Tigers broke down to tow them to repair facilities before enemy forces advanced. The necessity of dedicating scarce resources to recovering broken Tigers, rather than supporting offensive operations, represented strategic costs that production statistics alone could not capture. Each recovery vehicle required fuel, maintenance, and crew that could have supported additional combat vehicles. Each recovered Tiger consumed repair capacity that could have maintained multiple simpler tanks. The opportunity cost accumulated continuously. By contrast, American Sherman operations reflected fundamentally different industrial philosophy and logistics reality. The Sherman, designed specifically for mass production using automotive industry techniques, required approximately 10,000 man-hours to manufacture, 30 times less than a Tiger. The design emphasized commonality of parts, ease of maintenance, and accessibility of components. The Continental R975 radial engine, a commercial aircraft engine adapted for tank use, could be changed by a trained crew with a basic crane in 4 hours. The transmission, adapted from commercial truck components, could be removed and replaced in 6 hours. Suspensions used simple bogie systems with vertical volute springs that required minimal maintenance and could be repaired with hand tools. When components failed, replacement parts flowed through a logistics system designed from the ground up for supporting mass armies. American logistics doctrine specified 60-day supply levels of all Class 9 repair parts, meaning that every Sherman unit had access to 2 months' worth of every replaceable component. The parts themselves were standardized across the 40,000 vehicle production run, meaning a part from a 1942 Sherman could replace the same component in a 1945 Sherman. This interchangeability, impossible with Tigers due to continuous running modifications and variant production, simplified logistics and ensured parts availability. The maintenance burden comparison proved stark. A Sherman required approximately 30 minutes of daily maintenance, 90 minutes weekly, and 4 hours monthly to maintain in combat-ready condition. The routine maintenance could be performed by the 5-man crew using tools carried on the vehicle. Major repairs requiring component replacement were handled by battalion maintenance companies that could return a Sherman to service within 24 to 48 hours for most casualties. The American industrial system supported this with production capacity that exceeded attrition. If a Sherman was destroyed beyond economical repair, it was simply abandoned and replaced from the continuous stream of new production. The crew moved to a replacement vehicle, usually within days, and continued operations. This approach, wasteful by German standards of resource management, reflected industrial capacity so vast that replacement was cheaper than extensive field repair. The contrast in operational philosophy revealed itself in readiness statistics. Sherman units in Europe during 1944 to 1945 maintained average readiness rates of 87%. For every 100 Shermans authorized to a battalion, 87 were operational at any given time. Tiger units in the same period averaged 57% readiness, and that figure dropped to 30% by early 1945 as logistics collapsed. The readiness differential meant that numerical superiority understated American advantages. A Sherman battalion with 60 tanks authorized had 52 operational. A Tiger battalion with 45 tanks authorized had 26 operational. The effective combat power ratio was not 60 to 45, but 52 to 26, roughly 2 to 1 in Sherman favor, before considering the fact that destroyed Shermans were replaced within days, while destroyed Tigers were irreplaceable. The cost comparison extended beyond production man-hours to resource consumption and economic analysis. Each Tiger I consumed approximately 45 tons of steel, including 18 tons of specialized armor plate requiring scarce alloying elements. The Maybach engine required 127 kilograms of copper for electrical components and heat exchangers, plus 17 kilograms of nickel steel for high-stress components. The optics system used precision glass, requiring specialized optical facilities to manufacture. The radio equipment, standardized across German armored forces, still required components increasingly scarce as the war disrupted supply networks. Adding all direct material costs plus labor, a single Tiger the Rhine cost approximately 250,000 Reichsmarks in 1943, equivalent to roughly $100,000 in 1943. A Sherman, by comparison, cost approximately $33,000 in 1943. Though direct currency comparisons are complicated by different accounting methods and industrial organization, the critical point was not absolute cost, but cost per operational tank day, a metric that factored in readiness rates and operational lifespan. A Tiger costing 3 times as much as a Sherman, but operational only 60% as often, and requiring 10 times the maintenance resources provided poor return on investment from a strategic resource allocation perspective. German economic planners recognized this, but political pressure from Hitler, who demanded wonder weapons and impressive specifications, overrode rational resource allocation. Albert Speer, Minister of Armaments and War Production, wrote in his post-war memoirs about conflicts with Hitler over tank production priorities. Speer argued for maximizing production of the simpler Panzer IV and assault guns, which could be produced in larger numbers and adequately met most operational requirements. Hitler insisted on Tigers and Panthers, fascinated by their technical superiority and convinced that quality would overcome quantity. Speer wrote, "I could not make Hitler understand that building 1 Tiger meant not building 5 Panzer IVs. He saw only the Tiger's superiority in individual combat, not the strategic mathematics of sustained operations. Our tank policy was determined by technological fascination rather than industrial reality." The production allocation question became more acute as Germany's strategic situation deteriorated. By 1944, Germany fought defensive campaigns on all fronts, requiring maximum numbers of tanks to hold extended perimeters against numerically superior opponents. In this context, the decision to continue producing Tigers, rather than shifting resources to simpler vehicles, proved strategically questionable. Analysis by post-war historians suggests that if Germany had discontinued Tiger production in mid-1943 and redirected those resources to Panzer IV production, they could have produced approximately 6,700 additional Panzer IVs. These additional tanks would not have changed Germany's ultimate defeat, given Allied advantages in air power, industrial capacity, and manpower, but they would have prolonged defensive campaigns and potentially increased Allied casualties significantly. The Tiger's technical superiority in individual engagements could not compensate for absent tanks that were never built because resources went to over-engineered designs. Allied intelligence assessments of captured Tigers recognized both their formidable capabilities and critical vulnerabilities. The first intact Tiger captured by Western forces was examined in Tunisia in May 1943 after being abandoned due to mechanical failure. British technical intelligence teams dismantled the vehicle completely, documenting every component and system. The resulting 300-page technical report, classified secret until 1947, praised the Tiger's armor protection, firepower, and sophisticated engineering, while noting, "The vehicle represents advanced tank design, but suffers from excessive complexity, unsuited for sustained field operations. The interleave suspension, while distributing weight effectively, creates maintenance burdens incompatible with rapid repair in forward areas. The transmission, though providing excellent controllability, requires specialized tools and training unavailable at field maintenance levels. overall assessment, formidable in combat when operational, but operational readiness likely limited by mechanical reliability and logistics demands. American assessment reached similar conclusions. When Lieutenant Colonel Alvin Gillam's board examined captured Tigers in Italy during the late 1943, their report noted, "The German Tiger tank demonstrates superior armor protection and firepower compared to our M4 Sherman. In direct engagement, the Tiger holds decisive advantages. However, American tank operations rely on numerical superiority, air support, and operational mobility. The Tiger's mechanical complexity limits strategic mobility and operational sustainability. Our doctrine emphasizes sustained operations over prolonged campaigns. German doctrine appears to emphasize individual vehicle superiority in tactical engagements. These different philosophies reflect different industrial capabilities and strategic situations. Soviet intelligence drew more blunt conclusions. Reports from the main intelligence directorate of the Red Army noted in November 1943, "The German Tiger heavy tank represents capitalist obsession with technological sophistication over practical utility. Soviet T-34 production exceeds German Tiger production by factors exceeding 100 to 1. The mathematical relationship demonstrates superiority of socialist production methods, emphasizing standardization and volume over decadent fascist fetishization of individual weapon quality. Tactical recommendation: avoid direct engagement where Tiger's armor advantage is decisive. Utilize numerical superiority, artillery, and air power to destroy Tigers through attrition, rather than direct combat." The Soviet assessment, while ideologically colored, correctly identified that Germany's industrial philosophy of craftsmanship and precision engineering proved unsuited for modern mechanized warfare's material demands. The Tiger represented the apex of a manufacturing tradition dating to guild systems, where master craftsmen produced small numbers of high-quality items. Modern warfare demanded completely different approach, mass production of adequate equipment in overwhelming quantities. The Americans and Soviets, coming from industrial traditions emphasizing standardization and volume, adapted more successfully to this requirement. By 1945, the Tiger's reputation exceeded its operational impact. Allied tankers feared Tigers and exaggerated their presence, frequently reporting Panthers as Tigers, and sometimes reporting completely different vehicles as Tigers based solely on receiving accurate 88mm fire. After-action reports from Normandy claimed encounters with Tigers in locations where German records confirmed no Tigers were present. This psychological impact represented perhaps the Tiger's greatest success, creating fear disproportionate to actual numbers. But fear did not translate to strategic success. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, fewer than 20 Tigers remained operational across all fronts. American forces had more than 35,000 operational Shermans in Europe alone, with additional thousands in the Pacific and in depot storage. The production mathematics had determined the war's outcome years before the final surrender. The post-war legacy of the Tiger reveals enduring lessons about military procurement, industrial policy, and the relationship between tactical excellence and strategic success. The Tiger became legendary in popular culture, appearing in films, documentaries, books, and later video games as the ultimate symbol of German technological prowess. This cultural impact far exceeded the vehicle's actual operational significance, creating mythology that obscured important lessons. The first lesson concerned the relationship between quality and quantity in military equipment. German military philosophy traditionally emphasized quality, training elite forces with superior equipment to achieve victory through tactical excellence. This approach proved successful in earlier wars when conflicts were short and industrial capacity played limited roles. World War II, however, was industrial warfare, where sustained operations over years made production capacity more strategically significant than individual weapon superiority. The Americans and Soviets recognized this reality earlier and organized their military production accordingly. German recognition came too late to affect outcomes. General Friedrich von Mellenthin, who served on the Eastern Front and in North Africa, wrote in his post-war analysis, "We built the finest tanks of the war and lost. The Allies built adequate tanks in overwhelming numbers and won." The lesson is clear but psychologically difficult for professional soldiers to accept. In modern war, logistics and production matter more than tactical excellence. We fought with craftsmanship against factories. The factories won. The second lesson involved maintenance and reliability as critical weapon system characteristics equal in importance to firepower and protection. German tank design traditionally prioritized combat performance, accepting higher maintenance burdens as necessary costs. But modern mobile warfare required tanks to drive hundreds of miles to reach battlefields, operate continuously for days or weeks, and then withdraw for redeployment. Tanks that broke down before reaching combat, regardless of how formidable they were in battle, contributed nothing to military operations. The Shermans' reliability advantage, often dismissed by enthusiasts focusing on combat capabilities, proved strategically decisive. A tank that reached every battle was more valuable than a more powerful tank that reached only half of them. The third lesson concerned logistics systems and spare parts planning. The Tiger's requirement for unique components and specialized maintenance created logistics burden that strained German supply systems even before Allied bombing intensified. Modern military forces learned from this experience to emphasize commonality of parts across vehicle families, reducing logistics footprints and ensuring parts availability. The American military's emphasis on joint logistics and common components in post-war weapons development directly reflects lessons learned from comparing Tiger and Sherman logistics requirements. The fourth lesson involved the danger of leadership fascination with technology over operational requirements. Hitler's personal interest in impressive specifications and his willingness to override professional military judgment on production priorities demonstrated how technological enthusiasm could distort rational procurement. Modern weapons development processes emphasize operational requirements over technical capabilities, asking not, "What can we build?" but, "What do forces need to accomplish their missions?" The Tiger represented answer to the first question, while the Sherman answered the second. By the 1970s, as German veterans aged and began publishing memoirs, a more balanced assessment of the Tiger emerged. Veterans praised the Tiger's combat capabilities while acknowledging its operational limitations. Otto Carius, whose book, Tigers in the Mud, became a classic of armored warfare literature, wrote honestly about mechanical problems, logistics challenges, and the growing recognition among crews that they fought an unwinnable war. "We knew we had the best tanks," Carius wrote. "We also knew there were never enough of them, that they broke down too often, that parts took too long to arrive, that we were fighting arithmetic with excellence. You cannot win that fight." Other veterans described the psychological impact of commanding Tigers while watching the broader war slip away. "Every destroyed Tiger was irreplaceable," recalled Hans von Luck, who commanded Tiger-equipped units in Normandy. "Every time a transmission failed, we lost combat power we could never recover." Meanwhile, the Americans lost Shermans continuously, but new ones appeared faster than we could destroy them. "We were fighting ghosts. Destroy 5 Shermans, 10 more appear. Lose 1 Tiger, that hole in our formation never fills." The most poignant assessments came from German engineers who designed and built the Tigers. After the war, many went to work for West Germany's rebuilt defense industry or emigrated to American and British defense contractors. They brought with them lessons learned from the Tiger's failures, lessons that influence post-war tank design worldwide. The emphasis on reliability, maintainability, and logistic supportability in post-war main battle tanks from Germany's Leopard to America's M60 to Britain's chieftain, reflected direct application of lessons learned from the Tiger's over-engineering. Dr. Heinrich Ernst Kniepkamp, who led German tank development during the war, gave a lecture to American armor officers at Fort Knox in 1952 about German tank design philosophy. His assessment was brutally honest. We believed that technical superiority could compensate for numerical inferiority. This belief proved false. Technical superiority matters only when equipment reaches the battlefield and remains operational. The Tiger achieved the first requirement intermittently and the second inadequately. We built magnificent weapons unsuited for the war we were fighting. The Americans built adequate weapons perfectly suited for industrial warfare. That difference determined outcomes. Modern analysis using computer modeling and historical data confirmed what operational experience suggested. Researchers at the US Army Center of Military History in the 1980s developed models comparing Tiger and Sherman effectiveness across various operational scenarios. Their conclusions showed that in direct tank versus tank combat under ideal conditions, a single Tiger could defeat 3 to 4 Shermans. But in sustained operational scenarios factoring in mechanical reliability, logistics requirements, crew availability, and production rates, the Sherman's advantages in availability and numbers outweighed the Tiger's combat superiority at ratios exceeding 5 to 1. The study concluded, the Tiger Binaz represents a case study in how focusing exclusively on combat performance while neglecting operational sustainability produces weapons that underperform strategically despite tactical superiority. Museum Tigers surviving today tell the production story through their scarcity. Approximately 8 Tiger is survive in running condition worldwide out of 1,347 produced, a survival rate of 0.6%. By comparison, more than 150 Shermans survive in running condition from 49,234 produced, a survival rate of 0.3%. The absolute numbers, 150 versus 8, demonstrate how production quantities affect even long-term preservation. The surplus of Shermans made preservation economically feasible. The scarcity of Tigers made each remaining example invaluable. The Tiger story resonates beyond military history into broader lessons about engineering philosophy, industrial policy, and the relationship between perfection and practicality. The phrase, "perfect is the enemy of good enough," applies precisely to the Tiger's development and production. German engineers, pursuing perfection, created a tank that was indeed nearly perfect in its combat capabilities, but practically unattainable in sufficient numbers and unsustainable in field operations. The Sherman represented good enough, adequate for the task, without being optimal, but produced in quantities that rendered individual limitations irrelevant through overwhelming mass. This philosophical difference extended beyond tanks. German aircraft design during World War II followed similar patterns, producing sophisticated fighters like the Me-2 jet while struggling to build sufficient numbers of simpler aircraft. German submarine development pursued advanced Type 21 U-boats with revolutionary capabilities while neglecting the Type 7 U-boats that could be built more quickly. Across German military procurement, the pattern repeated. Pursue advanced technology and accept lower production numbers. The consistent result was tactical superiority, but strategic defeat through insufficient quantities. The Americans and Soviets pursued opposite philosophy. Design for production, emphasize reliability over performance, build in overwhelming quantities. This approach produced weapon systems that enthusiasts derided as crude or unsophisticated, but which proved strategically decisive through sheer mass. The B-17 bomber was less sophisticated than German aircraft, but was produced in numbers that obscured the sky. The T-34 tank was cruder than German designs, but rolled off production lines by tens of thousands. The Sherman tank sacrificed the Tiger's impressive specifications but buried the Wehrmacht under an avalanche of adequate armor. Modern military forces, particularly the United States military, internalize these lessons so thoroughly that they now shape fundamental acquisition policy. The emphasis on producibility, on maintenance and reliability as key performance parameters, on logistics footprint as a critical design consideration, all reflect lessons learned from World War II procurement decisions. The Pentagon's emphasis on good enough solutions over exquisite capabilities, while frequently criticized by advocates for cutting-edge technology, demonstrates organizational memory of what happens when military forces pursue perfection at the expense of quantity and sustainability. The Tiger I stands as monument to the limits of technical excellence, a reminder that war is ultimately a mathematical exercise where numbers, logistics, and industrial capacity matter more than individual weapon capabilities. Its 88mm gun could penetrate any Allied tank. Its armor could withstand most Allied anti-tank weapons. Its engineering represented the peak of German technical achievement. Yet for every Tiger that dominated battlefields, 3 broke down from mechanical failure. For every Tiger Germany built, America built 36 Shermans. For every Tiger operational in May 1945, America had more than 1,700 operational Shermans. The mathematics were merciless, undeniable, and ultimately determinative. Germany built 1,347 Tigers, each one a masterpiece of engineering and a monument to the belief that quality could triumph over quantity. America built 49,234 Shermans and proved that, in industrial warfare, quantity has a quality all its own. The lesson echoes across decades. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. Over-engineering is a form of strategic failure. And in the arithmetic of modern war, the side that keeps more weapons running wins more decisively than the side with individually superior weapons that cannot reach the battlefield. The Tiger was nearly invincible in combat. But for every Tiger destroyed by enemy fire, 3 more broke down from their own complexity. That ratio, more than any combat statistic, tells the complete story of why Germany lost the war in the factories long before they lost it on the battlefields. The most important characteristic of any weapon system is simply that it works when needed. The Tiger worked magnificently when it worked. The Sherman worked adequately but worked consistently. In the end, consistent adequacy defeated occasional magnificence. The production figures tell the entire truth. 1,347 magnificent failures versus 49,234 adequate victories. Everything else, as German General von Mellenthin observed, is just commentary.